This is devotional number 78, and we're looking at the phrase, remember Lot's wife, found in Luke 17:32, and the parallel passage, which is found in Genesis 19:26. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. We looked at this word in our previous study, our previous devotional, the word behind, and we were led to a number of verses that referred us to the idea of judgment. The way God uses this word frequently has to do with judgment. There's another word that we want to look at today, which is the word salt. Here in our verse in Genesis 19:26, and it's Strong's number 4417, and it too is indicative of judgment. We see this with the sacrifices that God commanded to be salted, as we read, for example, in Leviticus 2, verse 13. Where this is mentioned, the word salt is mentioned 3 times in this one verse. And this, when we find things that are mentioned 3 times, it's again speaking of the purpose of God. The number 3, if it has any spiritual significance whatsoever, has to do with the purpose of God. And every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with salt. Neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy God to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt. We also find a very frightening warning concerning salt in Deuteronomy 29, verse 1, and then in verses 16 to 28. These are the words of the covenant, or gospel, which Jehovah commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he had made with them in Horeb. And then starting in verse 16, I'll read down to verse 28. For ye know how we have dwelt in the land of Egypt, and how we came through the nations which ye passed by. And ye have seen their abominations, and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them. Lest there should be among you man or woman or family or tribe, whose heart turneth away this day from Jehovah our God, to go and serve the gods of these nations, lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. And it come to pass, when he heareth the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of mine heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. Jehovah will not spare him, but then the anger of Jehovah and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and Jehovah shall blot out his name from under heaven. And Jehovah shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the law, so that the generation to come of your children that shall rise up after you, and the stranger that shall come from a far land shall say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sicknesses which Jehovah hath laid upon it, and that the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt, and burning, that is not sown, nor beareth, nor any grass groweth therein, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which Jehovah overthrew in his anger and in his wrath. Even all nations shall say, Wherefore hath Jehovah done thus unto this land? What meaneth the heat of this great anger? Then men shall say, Because they have forsaken the covenant of Jehovah God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them forth out of the land of Egypt. For they went and served other gods, and worshipped them, gods whom they knew not, and whom he had not given unto them. And the anger of Jehovah was kindled against this land, to bring upon it all the curses that are written in this book. And Jehovah rooted them out of their land in anger, and in wrath, and in great indignation, and cast them into another land, as it is this day. Here we see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, out of which Lot's wife had escaped temporarily, in much the same way that the Israelites had escaped from their Egyptian taskmasters and Pharaoh. However, they did not escape the inevitable hand of God's justice, as this account points out in great detail. You also might recall that the allusion to Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as to Egypt, spiritually symbolizes the institutional churches and denominations that God abandoned on May 21, 1988, in similar fashion to what Christ did to national Israel when he hung on the cross in 33 AD in the demonstration, and the veil of the temple was rent. And at that point, the divorce went into effect, and God no longer, from that point forward, used the synagogues any longer. The temple was no longer holy. Jerusalem was no longer the holy city. And God completely changed organisms and began working with the churches and denominations for the next 1955 years.
Oh, clap your hands, all you people, shout to God with a voice of triumph, for the Lord Most High is awesome. He is a great King over all the earth. Oh, clap your hands, all you people, shout to God with a voice of triumph, for the Lord Most High is awesome.